Hey everyone. So today we're going to be going over vocabulary and on the digital SAT and the ways to tackle it, right? To make it easier on yourself. So it's not just about knowing all the words. So I'm going to give you some 6 pointers and then we can go and do examples with the questions from the Blue Book Test 1. So we'll start with the rules, right? So the first rule is the most obvious one. Read the full passage and all answer choices before you do anything else, right? So I know that seems obvious, but I have a lot of students who will skip or who will see, you know, B is a good answer, and then they don't look at C, D, and E and realize that there's a better answer as D or something. So just remember, timing isn't too big of an issue for most students, so you have the time to read the full passage and all the answer choices. Keep unknown words until the end. So unknown words, right, are like difficult answer choices that you don't know the meaning of. And I think students have 2 ways of going with it. They either immediately eliminate it or they choose it as the answer. And what you want to do is keep it as an option until the end. And if the ones you do know don't fully fit, choose the unknown word. But if one of the words you know does fit, don't feel like they're trying to trick you and having you think it's the good answer and then it's actually the unknown word. Go with the one you know if it fully fits. But if it doesn't fit, go with the unknown word. And then focus on negativity and positivity of the word. So if you don't know the exact meaning, right, you can think about, I do kind of know this word and I know it is positive. Like, let's say I see the word benevolent, right? And I'm like, I don't fully know benevolent, but I've heard it in good context. So I'll say it's positive, right? Or you hear the word miser and you're like, I don't really totally know miser. I know it has something to do with money and it's negative. So you say it's negative. And that can help you eliminate choices and really just focus on the general pattern of the things. And then this one is a classic, right? Pay attention to statement and restatement. A lot of times there's 2 parts in a vocabulary question sentence, and one part of the sentence has the missing blank, and the other part has information that sort of restates the first part. And you can use that almost to help you define the first part, and vice versa. It can sometimes switch, and the info comes first, and then the restatement is the part that you need to fill in with the blank. But either way, you should notice the structure to help you think about how to think about the blanks. And then pay special attention to transitions, right? So this goes with 4 on the statement restatement. Sometimes it's an and, so they're kind of going together, the 2 meanings. Sometimes it's a but, so there's a switch, or a however, or a because, which means one part explains the other part. And that will help you keep track of how the change is happening in meaning in the sentence. And then identify adjectives in sentences, which goes with negativity and positivity of words, right? You can sort of see, oh, here's a bunch of positive adjectives describing something, and then my blank also describes it, so it should be a positive word. All right, so we're going to go through these example questions from Blue Book Test 1, and I'll cover all 3 modules, right? So module 1, which everyone takes, module 2A, which is slightly easier that some people take, and module 2B, which is slightly harder that some people take. And I think it's 18 questions total. And we'll start with number 1 for module 1. So I'll read the sentence and we'll go over it. Researchers and conservationists stress that biodiversity loss due to invasive species is blank. For example, people can take simple steps such as washing their footwear after travel to avoid introducing potentially invasive organisms into new environments. Okay. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? So all these questions have the same type of question. So that part doesn't help us too much. You don't focus on that. Once you see that it's a vocab question, it's sort of straightforward from there. Okay, and now let's think about what we can do here, right? So it's going to be a statement, restatement, right? So you use all 6 rules, but I'm going to highlight which rule is maybe the best one to think about for each question. It's a lot of statement, restatement, a lot of adjectives and positivity. Okay, so the first part is the statement with the blank, and then the second part's the restatement, right? And you can look at this here, the for example, as the transition, right? So it shows that they're sort of connected. They're not switching each other. And then we go, for example, people can take simple steps such as washing their footwear after travel to avoid introducing potentially invasive organisms into new environments. And we're talking about researchers and conservationists, right? Who you would think, especially conservationists, would care about the environment. And we're saying we should prevent invasive species, right? So then it would go with, if we look at the answer choices, preventable, undeniable, common, concerning, it would be preventable, A, right? Because we're saying that we want to prevent these potentially invasive organisms. Okay. So now let's go to the next question. It is by no means blank to recognize the influence of Dutch painter Hieronymus Bosch on Ali Banisadr's paintings. Indeed, Banisadr himself cites Bosch as an inspiration. However, some scholars have suggested that the ancient Mesopotamian poem Epic of Gilgamesh may have a far greater impact on Banisadr's work. I might be butchering his last name. If I am, apologies, but it's okay. So which choice completes the phrase, right, of the sentence? So we have A is substantial, B is satisfying, C is unimportant, and D is appropriate, right? So it is by no means blank to recognize the influence of Dutch painter Hieronymus Bosch. Okay. And then look, we have this transition, right? And he's cited as an inspiration. So we have substantial, satisfying, and it's by no means. So the no means is an interesting thing because it's sort of setting up that it's not this thing that we're going to be putting here, okay? However, some scholars have suggested that ancient Mesopotamian poem, Epic of Gilgamesh, may have had a far greater impact. Okay, so they're saying that this other thing, this poem, Epic of Gilgamesh, has a bigger impact on Banisadr's work. But it's also saying, indeed, Banisadr cites Bosch. So he still matters, but he's not the most important. So by no means substantial. I wouldn't go with that because it's saying he does matter, right? Also, we should think about how this is about transitions with the indeed and the however, right? And then we want to go with, so it's not going to be substantial. And it won't be satisfying, doesn't really make sense. And then we're left with unimportant and appropriate. So they're talking about the importance or not of the influence. So it makes sense to go with unimportant because it's saying by no means unimportant. So it's this double negative that ends up not saying, not really that he is important, but he's not totally irrelevant, right? So we're going to go with C here. Okay. And then for each of these questions, right, you can try them on your own first, think about the rules, and then see how I sort of think them through. And then on this one, due to their, so that was module 1. We're on to module 2A now. And this one will have, I think, 8 questions. And then we'll do module 2B, which also has 8 questions. Due to their often strange images, highly experimental syntax, and opaque subject matter, many of John Ashbery's poems can be quite difficult to blank, and thus are the object of heated debate among scholars. A, delegate, B, compose, C, interpret, D, renounce. Okay, and we're going to focus on the adjectives here, right? We have, this is your transition, right? This one doesn't have so much statement and restatement, although you can think of the first part as setting it up. So they're strange, highly experimental syntax. Remember, syntax is grammar and structure, and opaque, which is hard to see through. So all these things make it seem like he's hard to read, right? And then can be quite difficult, right? So that's where the hard. So hard to read, how would we say that? Hard to compose, that would be if we were writing them, but we're reading them. He's already, or the scholars are reading them, right? Not Ashbery. So it'd be not compose. And then renouncing, right, is to quit them or reject them, which doesn't make sense. And delegate also doesn't make sense. So we're going to go with interpret. It's hard to interpret his work. Okay. Great. And now we'll go to the next one. Monica Lopez Ferreira and others at Brazil's Butantan Institute are studying the freshwater stingray species Poda matragon rex to determine whether biological characteristics such as the ray's age and sex have blank effect on the toxicity of their venom. That is, to see differences in these traits are associated with considerable variations in venom potency. Okay. And which choice best completes this one? So what we'll do here, right, is we have disconcerting, an acceptable, an imperceptible, and a substantial. Okay, so what type of effect does it have, right? And then we're gonna do, right, so we have positivity, negativity. This is a restatement too. That'll help you especially. So remember, you use all 6 of them always, but I'm just sort of highlighting maybe the most helpful one for each question. So have a blank effect on the toxicity of their venom. So that is to see if differences in these traits are associated with the considerable variations in, so considerable variations, right? So that's what they're trying to see, right? So they're trying to see if they have, considerable is like about size, right? So we're trying to find something that's similar to that. And it's about large size. So it wouldn't be imperceptible because that's small. It wouldn't be acceptable. That doesn't really do with size. And disconcerting is worrying, and that has a negative connotation, while considerable doesn't really have a negative connotation, right? It's sort of neutral, maybe slightly positive. So we're left with substantial, right? Which is almost a synonym for considerable. Okay. So now we'll go to the next question, number 3. Former astronaut Ellen Ochoa says that although she doesn't have a definite idea of when it might happen, she blank demand that humans will someday need to be able to live in other environments than those found on Earth. This conjecture informs her interest in future research missions to the moon. Okay, so she's interested in going to the moon. All right, so I want you to focus here on the transitions, right? It says that although she doesn't have a definite idea of what might happen, she blank that humans will one day live on the moon, right? So although, and then she has interest in future research missions. So if she has interest in future research missions, I wouldn't think she doubts that humans will someday need to live on the moon, right? Okay. And then I don't think she would demand that humans would someday live on the moon or establish, right? Just think about the future. She doesn't fully know, right? Because it says, although she doesn't have a definite idea, she speculates. Okay. And speculation is about thinking in terms of the future. And now number 4, following the principles of community-based participatory research, tribal nations and research institutions are equal partners in health studies conducted on reservations. The collaboration between the Crow Tribe and Montana State University blank this model. Tribal citizens worked alongside scientists to designate the methodology and continue to assist in data collection. So I want you to notice this colon here, right? So the second part's explaining the first part. And then we're going to be doing, so it's a restatement of what should be in the first part. And then a collaboration between the Crow Tribe and Montana State University, right? And then we're going to say, is it going to be circumvents, eclipses, fabricates, or exemplifies? So the first part, right, is that they're emphasizing that they should be equal partners. And then here they're telling us they worked alongside. So they do seem like equal partners there. So then that means that this sort of is an example of that. So it's not going to be fabricates, which is make up. Eclipse would be like to replace, but it's doing the same thing. And circumvents is to avoid. So we're left with D, exemplifies, right? It's an example. Okay, great. So now I'll go to the next one. This is module, remember, 2A. Okay, even if you did this test and you did module 1 and then module 2B, it's still good to do module 2A just to practice. And vice versa, right? If you got module 2A on your practice test, do module 2B to practice the harder questions. So researchers have struggled to pinpoint specific causes for hiccups, which happen when a person's diaphragm contracts. Blank. However, neuroscientist Kimberly Whitehead has found that these uncontrollable contractions may play an important role in helping infants regulate their breathing. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? Okay. Honestly, I like these passages because you always learn these interesting facts, like about this regulation of breathing, but I guess on the test you can't get you distracted by that. But for now we can, right? We're not in a rush right now. So uncontrollable contractions, right? I want to focus on that. Right? That's an adjective thing. And then we're gonna do right? And in general, we're gonna focus on adjectives here. So we're gonna say we have involuntary, beneficially, strenuously, smoothly. So it doesn't say anything that would make me think of smoothness or strenuousness, right? So it does say it's beneficial, or they play an important role in helping them, but the better choice is involuntary because we get this. What type of contracts blank? Uncontrollable contractions, involuntarily contracts. So we get A, right? So B could have made sense, but A is more specific and more ties in directly with the information we get after. Okay, now we'll try the next one. The parasitic daughter plant increases its reproductive success by flowering at the same time as the host plant is latched onto. In 2020, Jiang Wu and his colleagues determined that the tiny daughter achieves this with its host by absorbing and utilizing a protein the host produces when it is about to flower. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? Okay. So we have synchronization, hibernation, prediction, and moderation. So it achieves what? So it's statement, restatement, right? The parasitic. So that's kind of a negative connotation word. Introduces its reproductive success by flowering at the same time. That's an important adjective, right? Same time. Achieves this blank. Hibernation, they don't talk about hibernating. Prediction, I mean, we could almost think it's predicting when it's doing it, but we don't know that. That's not really mentioned. And moderation also doesn't make sense. And synchronization, right? Synchronicity is about being on the same time, so it's A. Okay, so that's why you also want to look at all answer choices and sort of work your way through them, like a maze or something. Okay, so now I'll try the next one. Let's see. All right, so number 7. Ophelia Zepida's contributions to the field of linguistics are blank. Her many accomplishments include working as a linguistics professor and bilingual poet, authoring the first Tohono O'odham grammar book, and co-founding the American Indian Language Development Institute. So which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? Okay. So again, right, this one is going to be about positive, negative. We also have statement, restatement because of this colon, and then we get this information. So what are the contributions, right? That's what we want to know. What are they? So then their accomplishments, which is a positive word. And then she did all these various things, right? Co-founding, authoring, and working as a linguistics professor. So what are her accomplishments in field of linguistics, right? And we list 3 different things, and we're talking positively. So then that is telling us, right? Pragmatic would be practical. That doesn't really fit here. Controversial, you could see contributions being controversial, but that's not really mentioned at all. And then you're left with extensive and universal. Universal would be saying it applies to everyone. That's a very strong phrase, so it doesn't totally make sense. But extensive, right, is they're very thorough and big. So we're going to go with extensive. Okay. And now we will try the next one. I think this is the last one from Module 1A. It's number 8 on that one. In the indigenous intercropping system known as the Three Sisters, maize, squash, and beans form a blank foreman web of relations. Maize provides the structure on which the bean vines grow. The squash vines cover the soil, discouraging competition from weeds. And the beans aid their two sisters by enriching the soil with essential nitrogen. Okay. So which choice completes the text with the most logical? We have indecipherable, ornamental, obscure, intricate. So we've read the whole passage, looked at the answer choices. So that's our first rule, right? And now you want to think about so it's discouraging competition, right? And then we're missing an adjective here, right? So we've been focusing on adjectives before. Now we're missing one. So the beans aid their two sisters. Maize provides the structure, right? We have a colon, so it's a statement, restatement. So what type of web is this? Is it indecipherable? If it was indecipherable, we wouldn't be able to explain it this well, so it's not that. Ornamental means it's not important, but it seems to matter, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't grow. Obscure is sort of like indecipherable. So then let's look at D to make sure it makes sense. Intricate, right? So it's complicated. And that would make sense here, right? There's a lot going on to make this all work. So it is D. Okay, great. So now we finished module 1 and module 2A, and we're going to go to module 2B. I think another 8 questions. And they're supposed to be harder, but I think we can handle them. In habitats with limited nutrients, certain fungus species grow on the roots of trees, engaging in mutually beneficial relationships known as ectomycorrhizae. In the symbiotic exchange, the tree provides the fungus with carbon, a nutrient necessary for both species, and the fungus blank by enhancing the tree's ability to absorb nitrogen, another key nutrient from the soil. It's interesting, this passage is almost identical in terms of topic as the last one, right? I was talking about the union of various vegetation, and here talking about fungus and trees having this symbiotic relationship. There's a lot of nature stuff in these questions. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? So we have overreacts, reciprocates, retaliates, and deviates, right? And again, I want you to focus on adjectives. It's also statement, restatement, again with this colon. It's a symbiotic exchange. It enhances the abilities. It's mutually beneficial. That's the big adjective. So they're helping each other. And what does the fungus do, right? If you help one thing, if one thing helps you and then you do it back, what is that called, right? Overreacts, that has a negative connotation. Retaliates would be like if you're attacked, you would attack back. Deviates if you're doing something different. So then you get reciprocates. It returns the favor and reciprocates it. Okay. So now we'll go to the next one. Okay, so number 2, handedness is a preferential use of either the right or left hand. Typically is easy to observe. Handedness, comma, a preferential use of either the right or left hand. Typically is easy to observe in humans. Because this trait is present but less, blank, in many other animals, animal behavior researchers often employ tests specially designed to reveal individual animals' preference for a certain hand or paw. So it's present, but less something, right? So let's focus on transitions, right? We have a because here, so it's setting up a relationship between the first part and the second part. So the first part explains the second part. And then let's see, our choices: recognizable, intriguing, significant, or useful. And they're doing tasks specifically designed to reveal. So they're working hard to reveal this aspect, right? So if it was easily, recognizable, it could be. But then if it's intriguing, right? It wouldn't, but less intriguing. They're still interested in it, so that one doesn't make sense. Less significant, if it's less significance, they might not use it either. Less useful seems less related. But if it's less recognizable, then that means that they have to develop these tasks to be able to see it. Otherwise, if it was as recognizable, it'd be pretty obvious, right? Like with me, you could tell I'm right-handed if you meet me in person. If you're left-handed, people can tell because you just write with it usually. Some people are ambidextrous and they're maybe a little trickier, but the vast majority of us are very much one hand or the other. Okay. And now I'll go to number 3. And remember, you can pause this at any time to take a break or to try them on your own, or you can skip around to the ones you have the most questions on. In Nature Poem 2017, Kumeyayi, I hope I'm pronouncing that okay, poet Tommy Pico portrays his blank, the natural world, by honoring the centrality of nature within his tribe's traditional beliefs while simultaneously expressing his distaste for being in wilderness settings himself. Okay, so it's interesting. We're going to do transitions focus, right? And we still use all of them. So the natural world by honoring the centrality of nature. Okay, so this is positively related to nature. And then he has distaste for being in it. So there's this conflict going on there, right? And we get that through the while simultaneously. So there should be a conflict here. Responsiveness would just be if you liked it. Ambivalence maybe works, right? Ambivalence is when you're not sure how you feel or when something is not totally clear. Renunciation is when you reject it. So that would be if it was only the distaste. And mastery over would be if you controlled it, which definitely doesn't seem to be what's happening. So then you're left with ambivalence toward. Okay, and now we'll try the next one. Some scientists have suggested the mammals in the Mesozoic era were not a very blank group. But paleontologist Zhezhi Luo's research suggests that early mammals living in the shadow of dinosaurs weren't all ground-dwelling insectivores. Fossils of various plant-eating mammals have been found in China, including species like Velodon diplomulus, which Luo says could glide like a flying squirrel. Okay, so again, it's transitions. We have this but. It's a very key but here. All right, because it's setting up. They're not some certain very much of this, but then there's this. And what is this part, right? So they were living in the shadow of dinosaurs, and they weren't all ground-dwelling insectivores. And then fossils have been found in China. Okay. So they weren't all of this thing. So there seems to be some variety there. Now we look at our choices, right? Predatory, obscure, diverse, and localized. So if we were saying they were not a very localized group, that would mean we're spreading them out, but it's saying it's surprising that they're spread out. And we're not talking about their being predatory. They're obscure, they'd always be hidden. So then honestly, our best choice is diverse. They weren't a very diverse group, but they weren't all ground-dwelling insectivores either, right? There's a kind of a blend here. They've been found in China, and then they could glide like flying squirrels. So they're not that diverse, but they have some diversity going on. Okay, and now we'll go to 5. Critics have asserted that fine art and fashion rarely blink. In a world where artists create timeless works for exhibition and designers periodically produce new styles for the public to buy. Louis Seno / Shashan Banak, beadwork artist and designer Jamie Okuma challenges this view. Her work can be seen in the Metropolitan Museum of Art and purchased through her online boutique. Okay, so statement, restatement. So here, right, she can do both. She's getting Museum of Art and online. So she's challenging some view. So if this view were that they rarely don't work together, she wouldn't be challenging it, right? So then they rarely succumb. That means they rarely give in to each other. That doesn't make sense. Prevails, they rarely stand out, which also doesn't work. And I guess so we're left with diverge and intersect, which are sort of antonyms. If they rarely diverge, she wouldn't be challenging the the view by combining them. So it must be that they rarely intersect, and she's challenging that by making them join together, right? Okay. And now we'll go to 6. The author's claim about the relationship between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens is blank, as it fails to account for several recent archaeological discoveries. To be convincing, his argument would need to address recent finds of additional hominid fossils, such as the latest Denisovan specimens and Homo longi. And our answer choices are A, disorienting, B, tenuous, C, nuanced, and D, unoriginal. Okay. And then, right, we're going to focus on transitions, any restatement and adjectives. We're also going to focus on positivity and negativity here. So it fails to account for several recent. So fails, I think, sets up a sort of negativity. To be convincing his argument. So to be convincing his argument would need, so it's still, that's also negative. So we're looking for a negative word. So disorienting has a negative connotation. And then tenuous also has a negative connotation, right? It's not stable. Nuanced is positive. So I'd cross that off, and unoriginal is negative. Okay. And now let's see how specific we can get. We don't talk about him copying someone's claim or his claim not being new. So it's not going to be unoriginal. And we don't talk about it being confusing. So it's not disorienting. Tenuous means it's not fully gripped, right? It's sort of like on the edge. And that would be this one, right? Because it's not fully convincing. Okay. And now we'll go to number 7. The province of Zoconochco was situated on the Pacific coast, hundreds of kilometers southeast of Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. Because Zoconochco's location within the empire was so blank, cacao and other trade goods produced there could reach the capital only after a long overland journey. Okay, so we're missing the adjective. And you want to think about cacao and other trade goods produced there. So it's also a statement restatement there, right? After a long overhand journey. Let's look at the answer choices. Unobtrusive, that's when it's hidden away. Concealed is also hidden. Well, concealed is more hidden away. Unobtrusive is it doesn't stand out or bother. Approximate is close, and peripheral is far. So we're talking about long overland journey. So the adjective should line up with this adjective, which is saying it's far away. So we're going to go with peripheral. Okay. Now we're on to the last one for the day. Last one from this test, number 8 from module 2B. All right, so this one actually we've had before, right? And for this one I did positive, negative. This was in module 2A, and I think it was number 6. And remember, it's also missing adjective. There's blank something. And her accomplishments include various things that are positive, right? And then we have pragmatic. So she authored, the accomplishments is positive. So it's not going to be controversial. We don't have any acknowledgement of it being controversial. It won't be pragmatic. So then we're between extensive and universal. And remember, universal was too intense, too big. So it's extensive, right? Because look at how many things she accomplished. She co-founded something, she authored something, there are accomplishments, and there are many accomplishments, right? So these don't even include all of them. And she worked as a linguistic, so she has extensive contributions. Okay, and that is it for this video on vocabulary using Bluebook Test 1. We'll be doing other ones like this for the other Blue Books and other vocabulary questions. So remember the 6 rules, right? To read the passage all the way through, read the question choices, to think about the positivity and negativity of the words, to focus on the adjectives, focus on transitions, notice the pattern of restatement, and keep unknown words until the end, right? If you do that, and one of those techniques sort of emerges from each question as more important, then you'll be all set. So let me know if you have questions. I want to see more videos like this. Let me know if you have different techniques or have heard different things. I'd love to learn those as well. And I'll see you all soon. Remember, this test is not the end of the world. It's just an opportunity to learn and challenge yourself. and I'll talk to you all later.